If you can play me a 26-track album where there's more than 4 good songs, I'll give you £1 million.
Good evening, everyone. Wherever you're streaming this new episode of Midnight Chats, welcome and thank you for listening. I'm Greg and this is episode 90 of the podcast. Tonight's episode was recorded a couple of months ago. It was mid-January when Ellie Jackson, obviously better known as Roux, kindly invited me to her house in South London. As you can hear, Roux was a little bunged up that day, but given she wasn't feeling 100%, she was very hospitable, and her place was also amazing. A house as vibrant and colourful and full of amazing objects as you would expect from Roux. For example, there's a giant gold painted palm tree in her living room that was a stage prop from one of her Glastonbury Festival performances a few years ago. We weren't alone. Her cat Calypso was weaving in and out of our feet as we had this conversation. And downstairs was the kitchen table where she wrote her latest album, Supervision, which was her first in 6 years, and that came out in February. So do make sure you go and check that out. As for the chat, it was fascinating to hear her reflections on those early experiences of Roux's exploding popularity. She was 21 years old, new to the industry when In For The Kill and Bulletproof became huge hits. You might remember she won a Grammy around that same time as well. Then a few years on, and the release of her second album, Trouble in Paradise, in 2014, was a period marred by breakups and fractures of various different kinds. And then a little later on, the life-changing emotional realization or breakdown, whatever you want to call it, which she describes in visceral detail, that led to a moment of clarity and the beginning of this brand new era for Roux. Now, Ellie is a lot of fun to hang out with, sweary and opinionated and funny and honest and refreshingly no bullshit. I felt pretty compelled by everything she had to say listening back to it. I hope you do too. So let's get into it. This is Midnight Chats, episode 90 with Roux. One final mention, as everyone is starkly aware, right now these are uncertain times for many people and many independent businesses, ourselves included. And you've heard me say this before, but alongside this podcast, we also make a music magazine, Loud and Quiet. We've recently opened an online store at loudandquiet.com. Do take a look in there. Maybe there's something you want to buy, including some rare archive issues of the magazine that we've put up for sale. It helps support what we do, including making this podcast. Roux, welcome to Midnight Chats. Thanks for coming on.
Not at all, thank you for having me.
And thanks for letting us come to your house as well, because this is actually the place where you made Supervision, the album that you released recently. So thanks for letting us do it here. You've just given me a little bit of a tour. So so people can have a bit of an idea. You made that album in a studio that you've built in the kitchen cum basement of your house, basically.
Yeah, I hadn't actually, as I was saying, I hadn't actually sort of built it yet then, because I realised it was the best place for me to make music was in my own environment. I really just wanted to keep it that way, and I felt most comfortable there, so I then built the studio there. But actually I made Supervision on the kitchen table, just on a laptop really, and like with a keyboard and bass and guitar. How
long have you been in this area? Have you always been South London? Is this like, you've been here a long time?
Well, my parents live about 5 roads away, and I grew up 5 roads away. I was born technically in Peckham, but then when I was 1 we moved to Herne Hill. But I say Brixton because nobody knows where Herne Hill is, and it's mildly cooler. Yeah.
In terms of the beginnings of 2020, you were one of the first people that I actually saw at the beginning of 2020, because I was at home with a few other people and we flicked on the TV and they were doing Jules Holland's Hootenanny. What was the experience like of doing that? It
was actually quite a stressful day, but just because my keyboard player fell ill that day and we didn't know where she was, so that's quite stressful day. So we had a stand-in, almost an entirely stand-in band for that day, because it's also really last minute. Like, they don't tell you weeks in advance, they tell you like 4 days in advance, and I'm not rehearsed obviously anything for tours, so I was kind of like, this is not ideal, but we obviously really wanted to make it work, and we did make it work. But yeah, it was good in the end. It was really good in the end, and we've never actually done Jules Holland at all before, which seems kind of mad. Yeah. We have been asked once or twice, I think, but I think I've been ill at least once. So it was nice to finally do it, yeah.
Did you always consider doing something like that, or doing the Hootenanny specifically, as a bit of a rite of passage? Because it is a famous thing to do. It's maybe a bit of a sort of tick list thing, isn't it? Because like New Year's Eve, everybody thinks, what's on TV? Oh, it's Jools Holland's Hootenanny.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a rite of passage, I think. I think to not be on Jools Holland when you've had, you know, any kind of substantial music career seems a bit weird. And also, I think as you get older, the likelihood of you going out on New Year's is so slim. Everybody, even though they don't really want to admit it, pretty much most people do just stay in and watch Jools Holland and drink wine and then go to bed. Let's be honest.
I hate to break it to anybody who still thinks this, but like Jools Holland's Hootenanny doesn't actually take place live on New Year's Eve. So
it's quite shocking to a lot of people.
I know,
like,
right?
As if we're all going to give up our New Year's to go to Maidstone.
Exactly. I think all of the people in that room would be even drunker if it actually was taking place live.
Yeah,
on
they
New
were
Year's Eve.
actually genuinely quite drunk, though. I was mildly drunk by the time I'd gone on stage, just because you have to wait about 3 hours.
Right.
So it's mainly boredom drinking. But, I mean, yeah, as maybe you've seen from the internet, I don't know. Ainsley Harriott was quite jolly. And everyone was genuinely quite drunk. Like, all the audience members in the corners of the room, they're really quite drunk. I mean...
I love how random Jools Holland's Hootenanny is. We were watching, and there was obviously yourself. Like, Stormzy was on there.
Like, it doesn't fit, does it?
It's
like
even more...
It's not like they've curated it.
No,
do you know what
exactly.
I mean?
The Hootenanny is always really... Just kind of the guest selection is always a bit wilder than like your average episode of Jools Holland.
And even your average episode's quite random.
Yeah. And it was going from... So on New Year's Eve, it was obviously you played, but then it was like Stormzy, Rick Astley, Stereophonics. You're never going to find yourself in a room with those people again.
Hopefully. I'm joking.
And I love how they do those segments where... Michaela Strachan was there.
Yes, she was. Yeah.
I was like,
Random
I haven't thought
guest.
about Michaela Strachan since she presented the Really Wild show.
I know, right? That was quite weird. That woman from Spaced was there as well, which was quite cool.
Yeah, she's amazing. Jessica, I forget what her surname is.
Yeah, she kept pointing at my outfit and I kept pointing at her shoes. She had amazing shoes on.
What was the experience of actually performing like on Jools Holland?
It's weird. I think it didn't help that I was having a bit of a strange day, do you know what I mean? Because my keyboard player is like my best friend as well, so I was actually quite worried. It was fine. I mean, TV's always weird. I think if people are honest, nobody really enjoys doing TV, but it's really important for obvious reasons. But I think as an artist and as a performer, it's quite a stale environment to perform in, and it's very, very much on cue. It's very rare and weird to perform one song and then stop. You know, it's like you ramp yourself up, you get vibed up to do something, and then it's like, okay, now just be silent, and then we're going to go over here. It's just quite odd, you know. It's not very realistic, but it's fine, you know. It is what it is. It was absolutely fine. It was just nice to sing the tunes, really. Yeah. Was
there anything else that you take away from the experience of doing it? I saw you post a photo of you and Stormzy on New Year's Day, like obviously taken when you recorded it, but you know, was there anything where you were like, oh, that was a pretty cool element of being there and doing that?
Yeah, it was nice to meet him. I think he's a fellow South Londoner as well, so we spoke about that for a little bit. He actually sort of ran up to me halfway through the evening and said, oh my God, I didn't realise it was you. And I thought, I'm not really sure how you could not realise it was me, but I'm wearing a pink and green petrol outfit, but never mind. But then, yeah, we had a really nice chat, and he was like, oh, I sampled you on my first EP or mixtape or whatever. And then we had a bit of a chat, and yeah, he said he was a big fan and stuff like that. So that was a really nice compliment. Yeah, it was really nice to meet him. He's a really nice guy. He's like the tallest guy I've ever met, though.
So I've got to ask, on actual New Year's Eve, did you watch it? Were you at home? You didn't put it on?
No, I didn't. I went round to Dan Carey's house, who I ended up recording and co-producing the end of the record with, and we had dinner. But his family were all quite ill, and then I was just in the middle of talking to him, saying something. I was talking to him and his wife, and he just was looking at me really disapprovingly, and I thought, what am I saying that's so awful? And then he just said, I think I need to go and be sick. I met up with some friends after that for like an hour or so, and then I just went to bed. But I never watch myself back. It's not a good idea. No. I don't read interviews. I don't watch myself back. I don't listen to myself. It's just how to hate yourself in 3 easy steps. You know, it's like, I'd really rather not.
Did you do that in the early days? Did you kind of learn a lesson of doing that, or have you always felt that way?
Yeah, I learnt my lesson the hard way. It's just best, you'll never see yourself the way other people see you, ever. You'll never hear yourself the way other people hear you. I'm a massive perfectionist anyway, so if I watch something and everybody else says it's amazing, it doesn't make any difference. It just makes zero difference. I'll be like, oh, but then I looked a bit weird when I looked over to the left and I looked uncomfortable. It's like you know yourself too well. It's like your mum knows you too well. Like your mum will always know if you're nervous, even if nobody else does. It's like, it's just, everything's very transparent. And I think you just don't need to scrutinise yourself to that degree. Like, if everybody says it's good, just accept it and move on. You did the best you could. You can't rewind and do it again either. It's not like you can go back. So you might as well just move on.
I just want to ask a little bit about the kind of early years when, I came to see Roux when you first started out, and like we're playing shows. I think the Enemy Radar tour was maybe the first time I saw you, which I think was around sort of 2009, 2010, something like that. And it just occurred to me in the run up to like coming to chat to you today, I was like, that whole experience of how everything went around the first album, you were in your really early 20s, and it kind of thrust into this much bigger world of kind of like, obviously the popularity that came in the UK, but then, off to the States you went, 18 months later won a Grammy. When you think about that time now, was it as head spinning as I kind of imagine for somebody who was, in your early 20s?
Yeah, it was really odd. Whilst I knew that like Bulletproof was going to be big, and we all knew that, and management had said it was going to be big, and the label had said it was going to be big, it's hard to comprehend what that kind of means for you as an individual. So you might be kind of like, oh wow, brilliant, I might be number one, or I might sell loads of records. I have no problem with that, but there's a lot of other stuff that comes with it. I'm experiencing some of it now, even though I'm not having a hit currently necessarily. So you can't really have a hit in the same way that you could then anyway, not for an artist like myself. But just the workload, it's so intense for a 21-year-old. I found myself becoming very, very, very scared mainly. I think I wasn't ready. I was ready for success, but I wasn't ready for the amount of pressure. So I don't mind, millions of people knowing my song. I don't think anyone would complain about that. And fame wasn't really that much of an issue. It wasn't like I was, I didn't feel like I had any privacy or I was getting stopped in the street. That wasn't an issue. It wasn't that. It was just how full on everything was, the traveling, and like I say, I haven't been doing it for 5 years now, and it's all taken me slightly by surprise. But it was just being that young, not really knowing yourself and your limitations, and also not really being able to communicate them. And even if you do, you're kind of just like a 21-year-old girl who's like moaning, in inverted commas. Do you know what I mean? It's like you don't really get listened to. You don't get taken that seriously. I don't think I had the right people around me at that time either. So I think whilst I was like, wow, I never expected this. This is incredible. It's also really, really, really hard to know how to deal with it. Like millions of people have said there really is no instruction booklet, but and there's nothing I'd even say to myself now. If I looked back, I wouldn't even go, oh, you could do this better, or you could do that, or why didn't you try that? Because also you're 21, first of all, you would have said, fuck off, I know what I'm doing. And second of all, you can only know that stuff later on. You can't just get it right then. You have to get it wrong to get it right. It wasn't a sort of amazing time that I look back on, but it also just feels like it went in a heartbeat. It went in a flash, and I didn't get time to enjoy it.
I was going to say, like, I don't know if is your Grammy Award around here somewhere?
Yeah, it's upstairs somewhere, yeah.
Because it was happening so, fleetingly and so, fast paced that in a way, to the outside, you're thinking, oh, well, it must have been absolutely incredible going to the Grammys and having a weekend there. And then, but you were
Which that was actually amazing. I mean, that really was amazing. But
why was that experience so memorable for you? Well, I mean, apart from the obvious of going to the Grammys, winning a Grammy, but tell me a bit about that weekend.
First of all, I was just in shock. I think it means a lot less to me now than it did then, because I realised that unless you're happy, it doesn't matter what award you're given by somebody else. But at the time, obviously, I remember my American A&R man texting me. I woke up at 7 o'clock in the morning one morning, around this time of year, and he said, you've been nominated. And I was like, for what? And he was like, for the Grammys. And I was like, what are you talking about? When you wake up to a text message and you think, I've not read that right, I've read that wrong. Let me just have a cup of tea and I'll just wake up and I'll read it again, and then I won't read that. And I still read that. And I thought, this must be an error. Like, literally this must be an error. And I called him and I was like, what do you mean? I don't get this. He said, you've been nominated for a Grammy. Obviously now I know how these awards ceremonies work. So it's not about me doing myself down or the Grammy down or taking anything away from myself or saying it doesn't mean anything to me. But, I had a huge record label that were pushing for that award, and obviously they pushed really hard and they got what they wanted, and I kind of got what I wanted, but I never really even knew I wanted it. I'd never even dreamt of having a Grammy. I wouldn't have even dreamt to dream that big. Do you know what I mean? It would have scared me to even think about dreaming that big. So I think it was mainly just severe shock. And as you can see, when I received the award, I was like, what the fuck is going on? I was just basically hyperventilating. I didn't know what to do with myself. Because to me, even though that was more like the schmammies, they call it there, where you're not actually allowed in the main Grammy arena. So you're not actually in the main Staples Center bit. You're in like another bit with like fold out chairs, and you get your award. Calypso, get out of the drawer, please. Shut that drawer because there's treats in there, and then she'll just try and get in there.
Calypso the cat is going after the dreamies that are in the sideboard there.
Or you can get the treats out and give them to her, or she'll just bug you for the whole time.
She's looking. Is she angry or is she
no,
like?
She's not angry. She doesn't hate you. She really likes you, or she wouldn't be anywhere near you. I promise.
Yeah, so it was that kind of it's in like a side room and it takes place like before. Yeah. It's like because the Grammys lasts about 7 hours. Doesn't it, in total?
That was one sort of good thing about it, was that I didn't have to sit through this 7-hour ceremony. But at the same time, sorry, the cat's really amusing me. But at the same time, you're kind of like, oh, I really wish I was in the main Grammys, and I'm not. I'm in this room with fold out chairs with no windows, which is kind of interesting. But then, they call your name, and I didn't really know what to do with myself. And also I think somebody who grew up in like the 90s, where you're watching MTV and you'd see like MTV Cribs or whatever, there'd be like huge rappers and like Mariah Carey and people like that, showing off their Grammys in cabinets and stuff. And you just don't ever comprehend that it could even happen to a British person. Because I was just like, what am I even allowed to win a Grammy? I didn't really get it. Do you know what I mean? I thought you had to be American for starters. I didn't really know much about the Grammys. And second of all, I just thought, I can't understand how an album with Reflections Are Protection on it is getting a go. It just didn't make any sense to me, and it sort of still doesn't now. I look at it upstairs and it's just a bit of a joke.
Sticking with the same period, Dr. Dre sampled a track of yours, and then it was going to be used on the Detox, wasn't it? Which never materialised, and then he put Compton out.
I've got a CD of it somewhere.
I was going to say, what? Yeah, did it ever materialise?
No, I don't know what happened. Apparently, another weird story. Apparently, The Game and Dr. Dre were hanging out, watching. Oh God, what was it?
Was it Entourage?
Yes, they were watching Entourage, and In for the Kill was on it, and they both apparently were like, "What is this?" Decided to sample it, and then I was playing something like V Festival or something awful, and my manager, thank God that doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't, does it?
V Festival doesn't exist anymore.
No, thank God. And my manager said, "Oh, I've got this CD of Dr. Dre and The Game and In for the Kill. Do you want to listen to it in my car?" I was like, "Yes." So we went into his car and we listened to it, and it had like property of Universal Recordings like all over it, like every 3 seconds. So you almost couldn't hear the track. It's really funny. It's like watermarking to the extreme.
They used to do that.
Yeah, it was really funny. So you could kind of hear it and you kind of couldn't. I mean, not really a lot happened in it. It was basically just like, I don't really remember it. It was, but I was just like, this is fucking cool. It had like good beats, obviously. But yeah, I have no idea what happened with that. God knows. Yeah. God knows.
Might make its way onto the internet in
you
10
never know.
years' time. So if we fast forward a little bit to sort of Trouble in Paradise era, from what I've kind of read and the stuff that you said so far, like it sounded like that was a period that was kind of fraught with lots of difficult relationships, personal and professional, and perhaps like after that you just needed to get back here and get away from that. I don't know, like if I'm putting that in the right terms. Like
I don't think I was thinking much really. I don't think I was really in control of my career at that point. Now that I am so sort of in control of my career, I think I realise now how much I really wasn't then. You know, I think it's much more obvious to me now. At the time, I'm trying to think how I felt. I mean, I'd come out of a lot of voice problems, and that was like my main concern. So I didn't really have a lot of focus on other things because I was sort of just so worried about my anxiety all the time. And I think, you know, so many people are anxious now that most people understand this. I think it's just all you think about is not being anxious. You don't really think about anything else. And that's kind of all I thought about. And then obviously I did want to make another record. I wanted to get another record out there. But I'd also sort of slightly entangled myself in another sort of relationship. By getting out of one, I'd sort of entered into another one. And I don't think I realised how obviously unhealthy that was for me personally as a creative until 2017 when I ditched the album I ditched and started making this one. I think it's unfortunate that sometimes it takes so long to learn a lesson. It really is unfortunate. I would really have liked there not to be such large lapses of time in my career so far, but there's also nothing I can do about it because you only learn as quickly as you learn. And I'm really grateful that I've learned those lessons now, and now I've made this record. But I think I just felt a bit in the middle of everything and probably a bit lost, but not very aware of my situation, because otherwise I would have done a lot more about it. You know, I would have been more proactive. And I think I was just slightly in a backseat in my life, if I'm honest with you. I think I was letting other people, not other people, but no one really take the reins, but I certainly wasn't taking the reins. I knew that I had to stop working with my record label because that had really come to a bitter end. They were kind of quite rightly as well. They were really fed up with me by that point. You know, they were like, you've spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds making a record that you won't let us listen to or have any say in. Like, you're going to get annoyed. Do you know what I mean? You are going to get annoyed. But I was really trying to push back. I was so terrified of being turned into a crap pop artist, you know, into just somebody that gets sent to writing sessions and, you know, has to sound like the last thing that was in the top 10 and all the rest of it. I think I was really overly scared about it because obviously that wasn't going to happen. Like, I don't think that was ever going to happen to Roux. It just wasn't going to happen. But I was still terrified of it to the point where I kind of pushed everyone away to a great extent and didn't really allow them back in. My world kind of got smaller and smaller, and they got more and more annoyed, quite rightly, and I hated them more and more because we just never got on. We never agreed about anything. You know, their answer to all the problems with Trouble in Paradise's promotion was like, get such and such a DJ to remix a track, you know, to get more plays and sales and stuff, and that obviously just led to a lot of arguments and a lot of shouting. I'm not fucking doing that, etc., etc. How can you turn this down, you selfish bitch, rah, rah, rah. You know, those sorts of conversations were going on behind closed doors. All got quite unpleasant after a while. And I think in the end, actually, the best thing for everybody involved was just to not work with me anymore. And they sent me a letter. I received it on like the 1st of January 2015, just saying, you know, you're no longer with Universal Records. And I was very, very happy. I called my parents and I said, I'm out. And they were like, oh, thank God for that. So it was actually a really good day. It was the right thing that happened. And then I realised I needed to move away from my management as well. So there was just a lot of... It wasn't actually all bad. It sounds like it's really, really bad, but it wasn't. It was actually all the right moves, and I just needed to get away from everything that had happened in the last 5 or 6 years and the first and second record. I needed to build new relationships with myself and with everybody else. I needed to go and find new working partners, which actually it took me a really long time to find. I think even if I'd have made this record sooner, it wouldn't have made that much difference at the time that it came out, because I still needed to find the right management team. I still needed to find the right record label set up for me. And actually that stuff doesn't happen overnight. It's taken years.
Speaking specifically about the music, was there almost a moment that you can pinpoint where, as you just mentioned, you'd got an album's worth of material, the follow-up to Trouble in Paradise, ready, and then you were like, no, just doesn't feel right, and effectively kind of like scrap that, repurge, next I'm gonna start again? Was it almost is it like a memorable instant that happened? Okay.
Yeah, it happened overnight. That was like the only quick thing that's ever happened to me. Everything else took years. This was literally overnight. I was on holiday with my ex-partner, and we were walking down to the beach, down to this like tiny beach. There was nobody there, and we were walking down this little gravel path. And I just remember, I don't really know what set it off. Well, no, actually, I do know what set it off. I was talking about the person that I'd been in the studio with, and I realised that I just let them in way too much in loads of ways. And I realised that I wasn't really acting for myself anymore.
You didn't feel really present in those songs, like you didn't feel, or as wholly you as it should have been.
It didn't. It felt like it was going in another direction, like it almost felt like another band or something. And I think I'd been telling myself, because of my fears of being overly possessive or being greedy, because I think everybody has those fears, and especially as somebody doing this job, it's very easy to make somebody scared of basically being a cunt. Do you know what I mean? And I'm so scared of being a cunt all the time that I think sometimes actually I allow things to happen to me that are really not okay, because I'm so worried about the way I'm affecting somebody else. I realised that I'd gone down that path way too far, and that I wasn't happy actually with where I was artistically. You know, it's not that the music was bad or anything like that. It's not like I thought, God, this music's shit. It wasn't that. It was just, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Why am I allowing this setup to continue when I'm not happy with it? And why am I talking about things as if I'm happy with them when I'm clearly not happy with them? And when you're talking to your partner, I think sometimes things become quite stark. I was just listening to myself, and I could hear myself sort of saying things I didn't even believe in. And I was like, I don't even believe that, but I'm saying it like I believe it. And I thought, who's in my head? And why are they there? You know? And I just literally instantly collapsed and had a panic attack, which I hadn't had for years. So that freaked me out. And we were just sat crouched on the floor trying to calm me down. And you know, she was like, what's wrong? Why is it so bad? Why are you so unhappy? What's going on? I don't get it. Where's this come? This has come from nowhere. There's no warning to this at all. And I just said, I don't know. I think I'm deeply, deeply unhappy, and I haven't realised until right this second. And I'm not happy with what I'm doing. I'm not happy with the setup. I'm not happy with the amount of time it's taking and has taken, and it's not even finished yet. And you know, I'm not happy with where the studio is or how it's set up. I realised all this stuff, and it just was like puking. And then I went and made a lot of phone calls. I don't think we went to the beach.
Yeah, we didn't get an ice cream after that.
Yeah, we didn't get an ice cream after that. I think we went back to the villa, and I had a bit of a debrief with some family members and some friends and stuff, and just decided to make a big change, you know. What's
great about hearing that and taking like all the positives from that is that moment happened. You know, you didn't kind of write it off as just sort of like a kind of just moment of upset and just kind of being like, okay, no, we'll just get back to it. It'll be fine.
No,
like,
it was really bad.
Everything that you've built in the last few years came from that moment, and you actually, in that moment, in the panic, collected your thoughts about what you were going to do. Yeah, and I even had to kind of argue, because I remember calling my mum, and she was like, "No, you're not doing that. You are not doing that. No, no, you're stressing me out now." She was like, "You can't be saying this to me after 3 years. You cannot be telling me you're about to ditch this whole project. You can't be." And at the time, actually, I thought I was going to be able to take some songs and write some new songs and take some bits and bobs that I'd done. But at the time, it's just me trying to, I think, just trying to salvage what I could. But actually, that wouldn't have even been a good idea. It would have been a mess of an album. Because it would have been coming from two different places. And it was also just a bit unrealistic and, you know, just unlikely. But I think at the time that was the way I was sort of making it okay in my head, was like, well, it's not all wasted, you know, I can use this and I can use this and blah, blah, blah. But even then, you know, my parents were like, are you really sure about this? Are you not just having a bit of a panic? You know, have you just had a panic attack and you just need to calm down? And are you going to change your mind tomorrow? Do you need to sleep on it? I was like, I don't need to sleep on this. I really, really don't. I never really felt anything so strongly in my life. I remember even calling my lawyer and my accountant like within hours and saying, change the whole setup. This has to stop now. I realise what I'm doing, and it's really wrong, and we have to stop it now. let's bring ourselves up to the current day, so to speak. On reflection of that, that was the starting point of basically a new chapter where you wrote this collection of new songs that's formed Supervision, that you recorded in your kitchen, and then you've built a studio at home. It's a sort of new era, really. All of the stuff that we've just talked about to this point, does it feel like the experience of going through all that has actually given you some like greater clarity than you've ever had before? Do you feel like a greater confidence, like a more control in what you're doing? Yeah,
totally. I feel like I'm starting my career again, but from the place I always needed to start it from, mentally at least. I can never start my career again, but I can do things in the way that I want to do them. And it was also interesting because actually even on that day, when I had all those realizations, whatever you want to call them, I went through some voice notes. Like the next day I had loads of voice notes from the album we were making. It's actually overly extensive when I look back. It was quite strange. I've got them still now. You think you can actually see how unhealthy the album was by how much thinking there was going on. It was way too much. It was like way too many harmony options, way too many, all sorts of things. It was just too much. Like it was like no decisions were being made. It was just options, which is never a good sign. And I went back in between all those voice notes, and I'd suddenly realised that I'd found, you know, the voice note for 21st Century, a voice note for Do You Feel, a voice note for some other track that actually didn't end up on the album in the end, but I already had like a couple of the ideas that formed this album. And I think the correct part of me, the right part of me, had sort of already sort of been thinking that quite a long time before I made that decision. And then when I started doing it, it's all just felt so right since. And I never would have had the confidence when I was younger, but at the same time, even when I was making the record with Ben, I remember there being uncomfortable conversations with both of us about whether it was a solo project or whether it wasn't, and me backing down in the end and feeling bad because, you know, we'd co-written so many of the, you know, most of the songs and all the songs really. But it's just because you co-write songs doesn't mean you're in a band, you know, otherwise every single pop artist out there would be in a band. Do you know what I mean? But I think, again, slight, even though I'm mouthy and all the rest of it, actually backing down quite a lot in lots of areas that I wasn't happy with, and I just won't do it anymore. And I won't be called a bitch for it. I won't be called, you know, greedy. I won't be called anything else. And if you think that, you can fuck off right out of my life, to be honest. I really can't be arsed with that narrative anymore. It's just not true. It's an easy way for people to manipulate you, to make you feel bad about the person that you are, but it just isn't true. I know what I'm doing. I know why I'm doing it. I am the best person to sort of do it. It doesn't mean I have to take over everything and I'm suddenly going to become like Terence Trent D'Arby, you know, or anything like that. It's not like that where I'm delusional and I think I know best and that's it and you can all fuck off. But at the same time, nobody else knows how to make Roux records apart from me, you know, like I've never seen anyone else make one. If they go and make one and prove me wrong, no, fair enough, but no, so far it's not happened.
The result is a record, Supervision, that is really concise. It's 8 tracks, isn't it? And it's just, it does feel like...
Someone actually said it was more of an EP. I nearly punched.
No. I mean, feels like decisive. It feels decisive.
Yeah, it was very decisive, actually. It's quite direct, I think.
Yeah, it is. And it's also, it's like kind of 40 odd minutes long, isn't it? And I think
it's like 48 minutes or something.
Were you ever tempted to make it longer? Were there much more material? Or was it just like, no, that's it. That's this. I've made this decision. It is decisive. This is the 8 tracks that make the new album. There
was like one other track floating around that was like half finished, which I will actually finish. But it felt a bit sort of too negative. It was about this area and about how it's changed, and it was called People Around Here, or People or something. I can't remember what it was called. I really like it. I had a really good melody. It was like mildly scathing, okay. And I just felt like it doesn't belong on this album about balance and newfound happiness. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't just doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. Dan agreed, you know, when I played it to him, he was like, I think it's a really good song, but I just don't feel like it's part of this body of work. Mm-hmm. And there was also a cover of a track by this band, I keep forgetting their name, done it for 2 years. It's really annoying. Oh wow, that's really bad. There's a cover called The Sun by a 60s band. Oh, it's going to really annoy me that I can't remember them. And it's called The Sun, and it's like a really weird track. It just had this really good riff at the beginning of it that I thought sounded like a riff from a hip-hop song. And originally I was going to sample the riff and then kind of write a song off the back of that. But then... actually, me and Dan started sort of playing it together in our sort of dub style, because we have this other thing that we do together that's this sort of like mini sort of dub band which we're sort of working on behind the scenes. And when we play together, it just instantly just sounds like some weird little squelchy dub project. And we started sort of playing that together, and it just came out in about an hour. So we just played it once down, made a little beat, did guitar and bass together, and and I sung over it and blah blah blah. And it's really cool, and I will put it out. I'm actually planning on doing a dub version of Supervision. But again, that just was like, why would I put a cover on this album?
Didn't feel like
why would a dub track? It's quite authentically dub as well. Like it's less electronic. It's blah blah blah. And I just thought it's just going to make it messy and less concise. So there was kind of like 2 other tracks floating around, but I don't believe they were ever meant to belong on this record. They just happened because I wanted them to happen, but it didn't mean that they should be on this record. Personally as well, just from a kind of creative choice place, I just don't like long albums. I hate to say it, but I really genuinely feel like when I see a track with 17 albums, I think, you fucking wanker. Who wants to fucking listen to one person for like an hour and 45 minutes or whatever? I think it's really weird. Just personally, after like 45 minutes, an hour, I'm so done, even with my favourite artists. I just don't think you need any longer. I know that there's this whole thing with algorithms now and like Spotify, and the more tracks you have, I can't play to that game. I cannot play that game. An album should be right because it's creatively right, and nothing else should be thought about in that process. The songs sit together really nicely. They're all coming from the same place at the same time in my life, when I felt the same. And that's what an album should be. It's a diary from that time, and therefore it's the correct length in my eyes.
It does fill me with a little bit of dread when I see like a 26 track mixtape, and I just think, I'm not sure the time is right for this.
What is that? It's weird.
But you're right, it is. I don't know whether it has been, the rise of that type of thing has just because of the streaming generation or like that. I mean, it must play a part in it, but still, I also think it's this idea that
fans want more and more and more.
Yeah, and for some artists, they're just ready to, they're happy to give everything. Like they like, these are the 26 tracks that I've made in the last 12 months, so have it all, as opposed to going like, here's the 8 best of the 26 tracks.
Yeah,
I've
exactly.
made.
I'm like, if you can play me a 26 track album where there's more than 4 good songs, I'll give you £1 million. It will never fucking happen. It just won't happen. It's just, I know I'll never have to give anyone £1 million because no, it won't happen. It's not true. I mean, I just don't get it. Like, and also I feel like self-editing is so important. It's like the one fall down of Prince. Everyone says it. There's just so much work. It's like, mate, you don't need to prove it anymore. You're a genius. It's fine. You're making it worse. You're making it seem less like you're a genius the more music you release. Just stop. And I really think editing is so important. I edit before I write. Some people edit after they write. That's fine. But I could never write 100 songs and then just pick the 10 best or whatever. I only wrote, like I said, I wrote essentially 9.5 songs, and I just took one of them away.
The Dan that we've referenced a couple of times in this conversation, like you said, is Dan Carey, who, people aren't familiar with that name, he is producer and songwriter and label boss based in South London. He is probably best known for working with like South London bands like Black Midi and Black Country New Road and people like that.
Kate Tempest.
Yeah, Kate Tempest, of course. So have you known Dan a long time? You wrote this collection of songs, and were they all recorded with Dan, or were they recorded and then you kind of finessed them at the end with Dan? How did it work?
No, we recorded them all in his studio, because even though like I wrote and arranged and basically produced it here, it is still a kitchen at the end of the day. It's just, you can
make a cup of tea whilst you're making a record downstairs.
Yeah, but I'm quite a purist. I've never known my cat make this much noise. It's hilarious. It's like the one time she needs to be quiet.
Calypso's found, is that her favourite toy?
Yeah, she doesn't have a favourite toy. It's the noisiest toy she's found, that's for sure. Yeah, we're both quite massive purists when it comes to recording. I've always been like that about the studio, or not so much on the first album because I didn't know what I was doing. But once I knew what I was doing, and I wanted my records to sound as good as the records that I love, obviously then that starts to become really important. So no, we're both quite funny about how things are recorded and what they're recorded on and with and all the rest of it. So no, I would never have done it here, but I wrote and arranged, and the sound and the feel of the record was all designed here. I went to his studio, which is down the road in Streatham. It's only like a 5-minute drive away. But I've known Dan for years. I first met him on the first album because me and Ben really liked his work with bands like Hot Chip and stuff like that. And we went to actually mix the record with him initially in his studio in Streatham, but it kind of went further than mixing. It was definitely additional production by that point. And me and Dan got on so well and both loved distortion so much. We just took it way too far, to the point where by the time we sent the mixes back to the record label, they were like, what the fuck have you done? It's like you've just put the whole thing for a bit crusher. It's like, that's basically what we have done. So yeah, we just really went for it. It was really gnarly. I mean, that record's quite gnarly anyway, but you know, it's really tinny and like jagged, but it was really gnarly. It was like all the way through. So yeah, that got shelved, but they kind of basically were like, yeah, we think we're going to send it to America, to like the biggest mixer on the planet, maybe not Dan Carey. And I think, you know, Dan was disappointed. I was quite disappointed, but actually Quicksand on the first album is still Dan's, you know, our mix we did with Dan, because nobody else seemed to understand Quicksand, which I thought was interesting. And he's the only one that managed to capture the essence of it mix-wise in any way, shape or form. So Quicksand is still his mix, but everything else is mixed by Serban Gnair. Now, we've known each other since then, but we didn't talk loads over the years. I went to a few of his parties. We've always stayed in touch, and we always really got on. And a lot of my friends know his friends and people as well. So there's always been a connection. But then I think I came out of this and I realised that, because like I said initially, I was going to take the record I'd been doing that I ditched, and I was going to take parts of it and then try and add to it. So I thought, I need somebody that's going to understand the record I've been making and also understands me, because I'm now in a really vulnerable place. So I called Dan from holiday. Yeah, all these decisions were very quick looking back. Wow. I called Dan from holiday and I was like, I need your help, like now. And I told him the situation. And there is other things to the situation as well, which I really don't want to go into publicly or anything, but there was other emotional issues and relationship problems. And I just said, I need your help badly. I'm in a really dark place. I felt like I'd kind of been abused as well. And I felt like I'd been worn down mentally. And I just needed help. And he was very sympathetic, very understanding, very supportive. He said, all right, when you come back, come back and we'll sit down and we'll have a chat. And I never actually played him that record. He's never heard it. He said, I actually don't want to hear it. He was like, I don't want to hear it. I think you should go and write some other songs, actually. I think it's a far better idea. So I went and did that. And then I played him like the beginning of Automatic Driver and Do You Feel? And he was just seemed obsessed by them. He was just like, I absolutely love them. He was like, right, that's it. Go back home. I'm free in April. This is in February. He was like, I'm free in April, so just be done by then. I was like, what? What did you fucking say? Hang on a minute. I was like, but everything takes me years. He was like, well, this isn't going to take you years because you haven't got years now. You've got to fucking get on it. You haven't got years, Ellie. He was like, it's now or never. You've got to turn this round. You've got to turn it round now. So you just better be ready. And I don't know, he just sort of sparked something in me that no one's ever really sparked before. And I had this confidence and felt supported and I felt believed in, I think for the first time in my whole career, because everyone else had always thought it was Ben or somebody else or an engineer or a mixer, or it's almost like they'd be willing to give credit to everybody else that was surrounding me, but never me. It was like, it can't be her, because I don't know why. It can't possibly be her that's doing all of this. She can't possibly be the talent. It's just not possible. And I'd made me so angry over the years. I had so much pent up aggression, and I'm quite an angry person anyway. So it was just getting too much to bear, and I felt it wasn't healthy. And then finally Dan came along and was just like, I fucking believe in you. Look what you've just done in your kitchen. It's fucking great. Listen to Automatic Driver. Like, what's the problem? Go away, do more, come back. I was like, oh, what a relief. It was really nice.
Before we started chatting, you took me downstairs to show me the studio that you've built. This is different. This happens since you've made Supervision.
Yeah.
But it's downstairs in your kitchen at home. Is that going to be the place that you foresee yourself writing more Roux records in the future? And also,
all of them, yeah.
Always now.
Yeah.
And also, it's an impressive setup. Do you ever think you would like to produce somebody else's record in there, or mix somebody else's record, like, would you move into that area as well?
Yeah, I would actually. I would really like to do that. I need a lot more experience first, I think. But, I've always sort of done those things sort of hand in hand with somebody else. Like, I can mix. I've got really good ears. I've got really good ears, and I know my music better than anybody will ever know it. And, I mix really well with somebody like Dan or whatever. And I've actually just recently done a cover of Damaged Goods by Gang of Four because Andy Gill asked me to. And that's the first track I've actually mixed on my own with nobody else there. And that was nice proof to me that actually you're at a point now where you certainly, to mix your own tracks, you could almost pretty much mix an entire album of your own, which I was really, 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 really happy to realise and to get to that point. That track will hopefully be out soon. And then everybody else can judge whether I'm shit at mixing or not. But I'm certainly really, really happy with it. Yeah, I would love to. I'd love to go into that area. I think Roux not going to be an old person's game. I don't want to be 65 on stage singing In for the Kill. It's not my vibe. It's just really not. I don't want to be doing that to anybody else or myself. She's a Peter Pan type character, and I'd like to keep her that way. I don't want to ruin her. I don't want to disgrace her either. So I think it's really important to me that I stop at the right time in order to be remembered in the way that I would like to be remembered. I can't see myself doing a Black Star moment. I can't see myself being Madonna or Diana Ross, like going out doing shows when I'm like 70. I just can't see it. I don't want it either. I also really like loads of other elements of like normal life, and I don't really want my whole entire life to be filled with music industry and management meetings and interviews and promo trips, and I just don't think I do. I don't mind talking about music for the rest of my life, but I don't necessarily always want it to be in the same vein where I'm always the artist and it's always about me and my life. I think it would be nice to actually be able to move into a different realm where I can spend the last 30-40 years of my life in my kitchen with my cat mixing records. I would absolutely love that. It sounds like a dream.
I would love to hear you producing a record for somebody else. I think that'd be really, the idea really excites me. That would be great. Yeah,
I would really like it as well. I think for me it would be about the right bands. What I really notice from obviously now knowing Dan extremely well to the point where he's like my brother, obviously I see the variation of work that he gets involved in, and it's hard for me to imagine myself doing so much varied work because I'm so specific with my music taste. I mean, my music taste is really narrow. It's really narrow. I mean, for somebody that does what I do. And I think that from a production perspective, obviously that's really important, that you can kind of apply yourself to many different musical guises and genres and stuff like that. And I think, I'd find it, there's no way I'd be able to produce a band because I haven't come from a band background, and producing a band is a whole different ball game. You need a very certain type of studio, you need to have a great engineer, or you need to be one yourself who knows how to record drums really well. Like, I don't know how to set up a drum kit. I'm not going to sit here and say I know how to do that because I don't. I know how to produce electronic records. I come from a dance music background when it comes to production, or a pop electronic background. And actually, if I look at the landscape today and I think about bands or acts that today, if I tried to make a list in my head of acts that I could produce, I struggle to think of one. And also I think that the ones that I'd like to produce are already well beyond my reach as a new producer. So it's difficult, but you never know, in the future that may open up. I don't know.
Anyway, good night.